Hello, welcome to the video notes for lesson 6-7. This lesson is solving systems of linear equations using addition or subtraction, and this is known as the elimination method. So the learning target for this lesson is I can solve systems of equations using elimination. Now, you've heard that word elimination before, or what it means to eliminate. So let me give you an idea of what we're dealing with here. So for elimination, so everybody write this down. When we have a system of equations, we usually have a couple of variables. So you need to eliminate a variable to solve for the other one. That's the big idea with this lesson. We have two variables. We can't solve an equation the way that we have learned when we have more than one, so we've got to eliminate one. Also, up at the top it says addition or subtraction. Addition is really what we're going to be using all the time. I know it says subtraction, but really it's going to be multiplying by -1. Now, wait till we get to that situation before you start asking, what does that mean? Also, one more thing to talk about before we get started. We're dealing with equations that are going to be in standard form. So it's going to be ax plus by equals c, where a, b, and c are all real numbers, and a and b are both not 0. They are not in y equals mx plus b form. If they were in that form, then we could do substitution and we wouldn't need to do elimination. Alright, so basically we have 5 steps. Step 1, add to eliminate one variable. One variable. So when we see our first example, you'll see how that happens. Now, for step 1, if we are not able to add, we will also have to multiply by -1 first. But wait till we get to that example before you start wondering what that's about. Step 2, solve for one variable. Step 3, solve for the other variable. Alright, so if in step 1 we found what x equals, then in step 2 we have to find what y equals, and then switch that around if that's the other order. Step 4, which is very typical, we're going to do a check. And then step 5, also typical, state the solution. Always state what the solution is so that we know what your final answer is. Alright, so our first example is on page 41. So you can solve linear systems using an algebraic method called addition method. In the addition method, you solve the system by adding the equations to eliminate one of the variables. So when we look at this first example here, you see -6x plus 5y equals 1, and 6x plus 4y equals -10. right away I noticed I have a negative 6x and a positive 6x. So, in step 1, because these two are the same but the opposite or inverse of each other, if I add them, they will eliminate. Negative 6x plus 6x is 0. So now, all I have is the rest of it. I'm adding this vertically. So I'm going from top to bottom. So 5y plus 4y is 9y. 1 plus negative 10 is negative 9. So there's step 1. Step 2, now solve for y. So I'm going to divide both sides by 9. And I get y is equal to negative 1. Alright, pretty easy so far, isn't it? Step 3. So I found y. What do I need to find next? Of course, I need to find x. I'm going to use ESS. I'll use the first equation, negative 6x plus 5y equals 1. I know what y is supposed to be now. It's supposed to be negative 1. So negative 6x plus 5 times negative 1 equals 1. Now I solve it. Negative 6x, still the same, plus negative 5, because 5 times negative 1 is negative 5, equals 1. Now, adding a negative is the same as subtraction. So if I'm subtracting 5, to do the inverse operation, I need to add 5 to both sides of my equal sign. And I get negative 6x equals 6. So now I divide by negative 6. And I get x is equal to negative 1. Now, interesting, x and y end up equaling the same number. That's okay, that can happen. It does not happen all the time, but it can happen. Step 4, do the check. Now, we do the check with the other equation, the one we didn't use. So I didn't use 6x plus 4y equals negative 10. So I'm going to substitute negative 1 in for x and negative 1 in for y. So watch what happens. 6 times negative 1 plus 4 times negative 1 equals negative 10. So we've got negative 6 plus negative 4 equals negative 10. And that is true. Negative 6 plus negative 4 is negative 10. And negative 10 equals negative 10. So it checks. Step 5, as always, the solution. Now make sure you don't get your x and y value mixed up here. In this case, they're both the same number, so it's kind of easy. We won't get confused, and we get the answer, and everything's all good. Sometimes students get the x and the y value mixed up when they're writing their solution, so be careful what you're doing. Alright, there is a second problem on this page. I want you to try it on your own. Trying it means you get through all 5 steps and see if you get a solution. Now obviously if you get to step 4 and the check doesn't work, then you've got a problem, so you got to try to figure it out. So actually I'll say that. If you get to step 4 and it doesn't work, then stop there and we'll go over it in math. Alright, so there's one more problem we're going to do, and that's on page 42. Now, we have the same type of situation, only a little different. So I've got 4x plus 8y equals 20, 4x minus 2y equals 30. If I add these together, I won't be able to eliminate either of them, because if you look, this is a 4x and a positive 4x. They don't eliminate each other. So we are going to distribute a negative 1. So watch what happens. So I distribute a negative 1. You can do this to either one, the top or the bottom, and it'll still work. So I'm going to distribute it to the bottom one. And I get negative 4x. Negative 1 times minus 2y is plus 2y, or positive 2y, equals negative 1 times 30 is negative 30. Alright, so now I add the original equation on the top, 4x plus 8y equals 20, to this equation. The 4x's will cancel, so this is my step 1. So that's 0. 8y plus 2y is 10y. 20 plus negative 30 is negative 10. Step 2, solve for one variable. So I have y, so I divide by 10. Y equals negative 1. Oops, not negative 10, negative 1. Step 3, now that I know what y is, I'm going to find what x is. ESS. I'll use the first equation, 4x plus 8y equals 20. Substitute negative 1 in for y, so 4x plus 8 times negative 1 equals 20. 8 times negative 1 is negative 8. I'm adding negative 8, that's the same as subtracting 8. So to do the inverse of that, I'm going to add 8 to both sides of this equation. So this becomes 0. I have 4x equals 28. Scooch this a little bit. Divide by 4. And x equals 7. So I have found both variables. Now my next step, step 4, is to do the check. I do the check with the other equation. Now remember, the other equation, the original equation was 4x minus 2y equals 30. That's what you're going to use. Don't use the one that you got when you multiplied by negative 1. So I substitute 7 in for x, negative 1 in for y. 4 times 7 is 28. Negative 2 times negative 1 is positive 2. 28 plus 2 is 30. So 30 equals 30, and it checks. Step 5, state the solution. Make sure you put the right number in the right spot. X is 7, y is negative 1. Bam, you're done. Okay, there's also another problem on this page that I want you to try on your own. So, to sum everything up, you have the elimination strategy. We're getting rid of one variable so we can find the other. There is an extra problem on page 41 and an extra problem on page 42. If you try it, for all those that try it, for every 2 students, I'll give you a point for each problem. For all those that get correct answers and have all the work to support it, I'll give you a point. So you have potential to earn lots of points for this lesson if you are paying attention and if you are putting in effort. Okay? So page 41 and 42, I want you to try those 2 problems on your own. If you have any trouble, you can always go back and rewatch the video. Come see me for help. Good luck, and we will see you in math.